People who were in a coma, what change surprised you when you woke up? Back in the 90s, my great-grandfather had a stroke. He was in a coma for 3 weeks, and when he woke up, he couldn't speak English at all. The only thing he could speak was the Choctaw language. He had learned it as a kid because his family lived near a Choctaw reserve, and he spent a lot of time playing with those kids. He spoke it fluently back then, but over the years, he completely forgot it. For about 10 days, the only language he could use was Choctaw. Then one morning, he woke up after a night's sleep and could suddenly only speak English again, with no memory of Choctaw at all. On top of that, he was able to repeat word for word every single conversation that had happened in the room while he was there. Whoa, brains are weird, man. There's a guy who, after coming out of a coma, started speaking fluent Cantonese, if I remember correctly. He even ended up getting a Chinese girlfriend because of it. I was in a coma for 4 days. When I woke up, everyone was talking about the baby boy I had. I had lost my long-term memory and didn't even remember being pregnant. My son was in the children's hospital in the NICU. He was delivered by C-section at 29 weeks. All this was due to me having Crohn's disease. I found out after I woke up my colon had ruptured during my pregnancy. My husband said I was talking like a child when I first woke up. When I woke, I felt super tired, but then the next few days, kinda restless. I remembered one conversation my mom had with a nurse while I was under. After a couple of days, I got my long-term memory back and remembered everything up until my second surgery, then nothing until I woke up. My son was my third surgery. Hope you and the little one are doing better now. Yes, he was 3 pounds 14 ounces at birth. Now he's 18 years old and stands 6'4". Thanks for asking. I was in a coma for 9 days. When I woke up, I was still on a ventilator. When they finally took me off it, my body didn't remember how to breathe on its own. I literally had to relearn how to breathe. It took me a few days. I had no natural sense of how long to inhale, how deep to go, how long to hold it, or how to exhale. Every breath had to be a conscious effort. It was really weird. Edit. For everyone wondering how I slept, I didn't, at least for the first couple of days. If I started to doze off, my blood oxygen monitor would start beeping and wake me up, and then a nurse would yell from across the ICU to remind me to breathe. I couldn't talk because of the tubes that had been down my nose and throat, but I remember one time I woke up exhausted to that constant beeping. I started focusing on breathing again, but I was furious about it. My nurse came running over, yelling at me to breathe. I glared at her and mouthed with all the rage in me, "I am." She must have read my lips and caught the fury because she just threw her hands up, said, all right, good job, and walked away. Anyway, I've never really had the chance to share that story before. My ability to breathe normally came back within a month or so, and my health is fine nowadays. No permanent effects. I'm now manual breathing, so thanks for that. Don't forget to blink. You jerk, you've ruined my next 30 minutes. My mom was in an induced coma for 3 months. When she woke up, she thought the hospital was trying to kill her. She tried to get out of bed, but collapsed because she couldn't walk. What scared her the most was how her feet had lost their form, bent over from not being used. She had to relearn every single muscle movement. She couldn't talk well, couldn't write at all, and when she relearned, her handwriting was completely different. She even said she hated how perfect her hands looked. Her nails and cuticles were flawless from not being used. I remember trying to brush her hair after she woke up, and almost all of it fell out. She almost died every single day she was in that coma. It started with sepsis from a diverticulitis surgery gone wrong. Now a lot of her hair has grown back and she can walk again, but the brain damage makes her seem constantly drunk. She's always dizzy. Still, after 5 years, her recovery has been nothing short of miraculous. Thank you all so much for the love. I can't wait to tell her how many people here are rooting for her. She's going to be so happy. And to whoever gave me my first gold, it's an honor to have earned it for my mom. Thank you. It'll also be so good for her to know that many of you went through similar things and are living with brain damage too. She won't feel so alone. Truly thank you to each and every one of you. Much love to you all. A good friend of our family was in a coma for half a year. When he finally woke up, he was shocked by how old his wife looked. He had lost the last 15 years of his memory. He remembered having 2 kids, but only as babies, and he had no idea he even had a 3rd child. That memory gap never came back. He basically skipped from a world with no mobile phones straight into smartphones and laptops. Being mentally stuck in the early 90s, but waking up in the 2000s meant there was a lot of change to process. But the hardest part for him was realizing he'd missed his kids growing up. This is the saddest story I've seen in this thread. Oh Lord, this is awful. He must feel like he's being punished, and it must be for something terrible. My wife was in a coma, 2 weeks medically induced. When she woke up, she had these very wrong memories. All of them were built from random conversations people had while in the room with her. For example, she was convinced they flew her to Washington, D.C. for treatment. What actually happened was my father-in-law had mentioned during her coma that he just got back from D.C. on a work trip. Somehow she overheard it while unconscious, and her brain twisted it into a memory that she had been flown there. Even after we explained what really happened, it took days for her to accept reality. Edit, this was about 10 years ago. She's not currently in a coma. My brother-in-law had a brain tumor, and when he was first brought to the hospital, he was out for a while. The nurses happened to be of Asian descent, so when he finally woke up, he kept apologizing to everyone for making them travel all the way to Japan to visit him. My stepdad was in a coma in the ICU for about 3 weeks. When he woke up, he couldn't find his teeth. We searched for a week, completely forgetting where we put them, then out of nowhere, he collapsed at the bathroom sink in the hospital. They managed to revive him, but nobody could figure out why he could barely breathe. Then the hospital sat us down and showed us the x-rays. His dentures were inside his body. They had forgotten to take them out when they put the tubes in his mouth, and they were blocking his airways. So yeah, we found them after all. Edit. Since this blew up, I figured I'd post a picture. The only one I have is on my old phone. Hopefully I did the link right. Here's a pic. Edit. This was about 10 years ago. She's not currently in a coma. I was in a coma for 4 days from bacterial meningitis. When I woke up, I was completely deaf. I had to communicate with my parents and doctors using a notepad and pen. Over time, some hearing came back in my left ear, but my right ear is still 100% deaf to this day. Yo! Someone else who had bacterial meningitis. I'm so grateful you survived. Trust me, it could have been so much worse. Thanks, man. I'm glad I made it too. The doctors gave me a 10% chance of living. Glad you pulled through as well. Edit. Just talked to my mother. She said the doctors actually only gave me a 5% chance of making it. Wow. My wife was in a medically induced coma for 4 days. She had a reaction to contrast dye, and her heart stopped for 20 minutes. For nearly 3 months afterwards, she was confabulating about her long-dead parents. She would talk about them like they were just in the next room. Or she'd say her daughter or brother had called, but they hadn't. Over and over, she believed her mom was alive, then her dad. It drove me crazy having to gently correct her multiple times a day. She spun these incredible stories about relatives, friends, neighbors, what they were saying, what they were doing, like full-on creative fiction. Then, about 3 months later, she began to come back. The confabulation stopped, now it's reversed. She can remember recent events, but her long-term memories are gone. I can't imagine what that feels like. She cries sometimes for her lost memories, but overall she's doing very well. My dad had a reaction to contrast dye after a head injury and ended up having seizures. It was like his brain completely rebooted. The only thing he could say was, "How's the girl?" because my sister had just been born. He couldn't hold or grab anything and spent several months in therapy. By the end of it, his mood had changed. He became very irritable. About 20 years ago, my cousin had a severe head injury from a fall. He was about 20 at the time. He was in a coma for almost 4 weeks. When he woke up, he fairly quickly discovered that his memory was eidetic. He could repeat entire conversations back word for word, and even tell you the date and time you said something. Also, he could memorize images with just a few seconds glance. His memory is still eidetic today. It's annoying as hell. Whenever he reminds me of something I said in the past, usually something I can't even remember, I suggest we bonk him in the head again. Looking at what happened last time he was hit in the head, he'd probably just develop another borderline superpower. Better not risk getting corrected or called out even more accurately. Nah, he's not working correctly, need to switch him off and on again. DKA sent me into a coma. I have vague memories of being sick beforehand, but my overall sense of time was just mush. Even years later, I can't establish a correct timeline. I have flashes of memories of different doctors coming in and out of the room. Once I was out of the coma, I was still pretty out of it. When you're on an insulin drip, they check your sugar every hour. I could never actually sleep, but I felt asleep the whole time. It's a hard feeling to describe, just mushy, runny time. I was in a coma for close to 6 weeks. When I woke up, I had to learn everything again. I had most of my speech abilities, but my motor control was awful. I had to figure out how to wipe myself as well as walk up and down stairs again. That took about 3 weeks. I had lost a ton of weight too. I was 6'3" and weighed about 145. 6 weeks? Holy God, massive head trauma followed by being injected with MRI dye that I was deeply allergic to. I was gone on the table for minutes. My nephew, 14, was in a medically induced coma for over 3 months. During that time, he lost about 30% of his body weight as his muscles atrophied. His first remark upon seeing himself for the first time was, "Did you forget to feed me?" Which was incredibly hard to hear since his family had sat crying at his bedside every moment he was unconscious. Medically induced for about a week due to sepsis. When I was in, I thought I was a bird with my wings outstretched that was slowly freezing to the ground. When I woke up, I thought I was in Taos, but it looked like Raton. I was actually in Albuquerque, in a hospital I had worked in for years. I thought I was 10 years younger. I thought I had gotten into a wreck, and that my fiance at the time was actually an abusive ex-boyfriend. I thought my fiance had found me naked on the side of I-25 and taken me to a veterinary hospital. It took another month and a half for me to understand what had actually happened. I was in and out of surgery and flatlined a couple times in that span. Once they were changing out my wound vac and I looked down and saw inside of me, that's when things finally started making a little more sense. I still can't eat cheeseburgers. Wait, what did cheeseburgers have to do with it? When I looked down and saw myself open, it resembled a cheeseburger that someone had cut in half and left in a fridge uncovered for 2 weeks. Thanks a lot for watching. Share in the comments if you've ever been in a coma, what you were protecting, and how it felt waking up. And don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel.